Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. In today's special episode, we sat down with Rex Lee, cybersecurity advisor at MySmart Privacy. He sheds light on tech-based hybrid warfare, what hybrid warfare is, and how technology is integrated. Here's more. Rex, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany.
So right now there's a lot of talk that we're in a second Cold War, this time with communist China instead of the Soviet Union. So to begin, how has warfare changed since the first Cold War, or has it?
Yeah, warfare's changed a lot. Today, what we're seeing is really a stealth war to begin with before a shooting war. And it's all associated with unrestricted hybrid warfare, which was actually waged against the West in the mid-90s by China. And what that means is that this is warfare without rules where everybody's a target. And that's slowly evolving to our tech, which I'd like to talk a little bit about today, which is tech-based hybrid warfare, where our connected devices and our connected infrastructure is all being weaponized and used to launch various cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, as well as to conduct espionage and or surveillance on people.
So it sounds like unrestricted, including tech warfare, involves things that we don't normally think of as warfare, so not the usual missiles and bombs. So how does the tech play in? What are some examples of that?
Well, tech-based hybrid warfare is simply a subcategory of unrestricted hybrid warfare. A little bit of history on that. Unrestricted hybrid warfare is based on 5th century BC Chinese military strategists and general Sun Tzu's The Supreme Art of War. Sun Tzu said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And this we're seeing today. It's not only affecting us with our tech, but how China is gaining influence over industries, as well as corporations, elected officials, and governments, and so forth, is they're doing it through money. You know, I've often said that China's weapon of mass destruction is the U.S. dollar. The more wealthier China gets from U.S. markets and partnerships, global partnerships with global corporations that do business in China, the more they can fund their military with that money. But what they're also doing is they're utilizing that money as a means to infiltrate all sorts of institutions, corporations, and government. And we see that today all over the world. We see it really in what we considered third world countries before, which China is gaining a foothold in, such as Africa. And people say, what's the big deal about that? Well, if you look at the new Silk Highway, it runs through Africa back into Asia. And as we migrate towards green technology, we see that 95% of all cobalt, which is key to green technologies, being mined in Africa by Chinese interests. And we're seeing this with lithium, as well as now we're seeing it with microchips. China's trying to gain a foothold in microchips, which Taiwan plays a big part in that. So all of this is connected. And you know, really, if you drop bombs and shoot bullets, you really have nothing left but infrastructure to rebuild. So it's better to fight this war through financial means first, as a way to be able to gain control as well as gain power financially and economically around the world. And that's what we're seeing involving China and unrestricted hybrid warfare, which then is also related to tech-based hybrid warfare and how China is now weaponizing our endpoint devices like smartphones, tablet PCs, connected vehicles, and so forth against our adversaries.
And Rex, expanding on that, it seems recently there's a headline saying the head of the DHS is warning nations not to accept telecoms or tech help from China. So to begin, why would a country accept tech help or telecoms from China? And secondly, what are the dangers here?
Well, the dangers are with telecom infrastructure. Today, everything is wireless, and Huawei leads regarding 5G infrastructure. Huawei, a few short years ago, was considered a national security threat. So the United States telecom companies were really not necessarily restricted, but were warned not to use any Huawei infrastructure because it poses a national security threat. We saw this with ByteDance's TikTok that was also labeled a national security threat because basically all social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, are surveillance and data mining platforms that utilize social media as a means for the developer to surveil and data mine the end user for financial gain. So, and what that means is that if you download Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok to your phone, you're also going to be giving up all of your personal and business information that's associated with the use of that device to these companies. So this is why they were labeled a national security threat a few short years ago. And as a matter of fact, in June of 2021, Biden administration repealed the executive orders dating back to the Obama administration and the Trump administration, enabling ByteDance and Huawei to freely do business in the United States.
And on the point of, say, these apps, for example, how exactly are they surveillance tools? What kind of information can they get?
Well, what people don't realize that any app, whether it's developed by Google, ByteDance from China, Baidu from China, which is an Android app developer and a Google partner, or Prisma Labs from Russia, which is the most popular photo editing app in the world, which is Prisma Photo Editor. Any of these apps are basically legal malware. All apps today enable the developers to surveil and data mine the end user. Now, unlike 10 years ago, when somebody was on Facebook, Facebook was able to surveil and data mine them while they were on Facebook going through the URL. But as of 2011, 12, and 13, when social media started to proliferate to mobile devices supporting a Facebook app, the surveillance and data mining is done through the app itself and not while you're online. So that means that when you're off of Facebook, the Facebook app is still surveilling and data mining you. This is the same for TikTok, which is a Chinese app. This is one of the reasons why countries like India has banned these apps. So when you're not on these platforms, yet you're out having dinner with your friends and having a conversation about something, these apps enable the developers to control the microphone and the camera. And a lot of times people come home, or when they go back on their Facebook page or their TikTok page, they start to see advertisements associated with the conversations that they had. That's because they're being reported 24/7, 365 days a year. The other issue with an app is that it enables the developer to data mine over 5,000 highly confidential data points associated with the end user's personal information, business information, medical information, legal information, and employment information. A lot of people don't realize that the app permissions, when you click on I agree to accept that intrusive terms of use that support the apps, as soon as you click on I agree, you're enabling that developer to collect your text messages, your SMS messages, your emails, including email attachments, your calendar events, including attachments, your location data, and so forth. So what you're basically enabling the developer to do when you click on I agree is you're enabling them to surveil and data mine you for profits. If you don't agree to it, then often you can't use the products. Even the operating systems that support our computers, like the Android OS, Apple iOS, and Microsoft Windows 8, 10, and 11 OS, if you don't accept those intrusive terms of use and those predatory terms of use, then your devices become a brick. You actually cannot use your technology. So you're forced into this intrusive and exploitive business model, which is called predatory surveillance and data mining business practices. So you're actually being forced into it. Otherwise, you can't use the products and services that you're buying today, especially connected technology. Anything supported by the Android OS, Apple iOS, or Microsoft Windows 8, 10, and 11 OS, which is also supported by intrusive apps.
And Rex, skeptics might argue that, this is part of doing business. What kind of information can they even get? Is it even that serious? What would you say to them?
Well, we're seeing a lot of attacks today. And let's get back to tech-based hybrid warfare, because what I just said is very relevant to that. It's not just the amount of surveillance and data mining that these companies can conduct on you through the apps. It's the fact that these apps today support operating systems. I call them leaky operating systems, like the Android OS, Apple iOS, and Microsoft Windows 8, 10, 11 OS. They're built on an open API architecture. I don't want to get too technical here, but what that means, an open API architecture enables surveillance and data mining to be conducted on that device. Before, it was a closed API architecture where your devices were secure and you had control over what was pre-installed onto your device. You can turn it off or uninstall it. You can't do that today. The open API architecture also lends itself to the ability for nation-state hackers to launch attacks on networks, including critical infrastructure. We just saw this last week in LA with LAX Airport, O'Hare Airport. Orlando was also attacked, in Phoenix. All of these airports were attacked simultaneously, which they were attacked by a DDoS attack, or a distributed denial of service attack that came up through computers that populated the networks, the critical infrastructure for those airports. As it turns out, the computers were described as zombie computers, meaning that once the hackers got in, they could control the computers, even though the computers were owned by the airports. Once they gained control of them, they could launch bots that automatically used the computers to do a DDoS attack on the network, bringing the websites down to these airports. We saw this with SolarWinds. We were seeing this with Colonial Pipelines and other major attacks that have happened around the world. We saw it in Saudi Arabia with 2 oil refineries that were attacked through the Microsoft Windows 8, 10, and 11 operating systems. Saudi Aramco was also attacked, 30,000 workstations. And what's happening is the computers today, the hackers can exploit vulnerabilities in the operating systems to launch the malware in the OS, which means that the attacks are coming from the inside. IBM's 2022 breach report states that 95% of all attacks today and breaches are human error or insider attacks. 23% of those attacks are coming from the supply chain, which is more than likely how these computers are being affected, which is coming up through the supply chain. You put the computer out there, and then the malware can sit there for 12 to 18 months, 24 months, however many months that the hackers want it to sit out there, and then they can do a coordinated attack all at once. We saw this with SolarWinds, where 18,000 corporations were hit and multiple governments were hit simultaneously through these types of attacks.
That was Rex Lee, cybersecurity advisor at MySmart Privacy. And for those watching our full episode, after a short break, we hear more from him on how a tech-based hybrid warfare would play out and what can be done. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.